Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show. This week we are looking at not all investments being the same. We go through a lot of different stages in our life, and what may work for us when we're younger doesn't necessarily work for us when we're older. Plus, of course, there's utility as your needs change. Plenty to unpack in this session, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the show. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show with me, your host, Andrew Baxter, and as always, my offsider and co-host, Mitchell Laurential.
Pleasure to be with you, Mr. Baxter, and we've got a fun episode installed today. We're going to go car shopping.
Oh, I love that.
However, we're going to relate this to an investment landscape and talk about stages of life. Just like buying a car, when you're single or married or with kids, so too does your investment have to shift in much the same way.
True enough, and I guess yesterday I had a really interesting conversation. I got to speak to a prospective client that was looking to come in the door, and really interesting, very frustrating, very sad state of affairs in all fairness. She's 62, low risk investor, and she's got 2 or 3 sources of information. One's a short-term trader, somebody else is a financial planner, and another one is a really long-term investment management type mandate. And the conversation I had with her, I said the difficulty you're going to have in terms of being able to make the right decision is like you're sitting in a room at the moment with 3 TV sets all playing different channels. You're not going to be able to follow any of them with any level of clarity, and likely just find yourself in a position of indecision, which is exactly where she is. And I tried, and what really hit it home, she was talking about some of the stocks she's got in her portfolio. She said, I bought some of this the other day. And it's like, oh my gosh, why would you, having told me you're 62, you're a low risk investor, what on earth are you doing adding that to your portfolio? And it's a real inconsistency. And it struck me, in the story I used to explain the journey of investing and where you should be in markets, I guess it'll form a little bit of the backbone today. I'll see if I can get a bit of utility out of my conversation yesterday.
That'd be awesome.
Incredible conversation. And again, a lot of people out there are in that position where they're listening to a variety of different sources. And it does start to make it very confusing and very, very hard to make a decision. So I love that linear, go to one place that you can really trust and rely and follow that process all the way through. And that's how you make good, clear, high quality decisions. And
we'll get this straight, I guess, on the record from the get-go. It's not most people's fault because they've never done this before or they haven't had the proper guidance. So understanding where to listen to or who to is actually probably the hardest task, right?
It is. And as human beings, we're conditioned, get a second, third, fourth opinion, ask around, see what you think. And these days, getting online and asking around is Google, and all of a sudden you've really opened Pandora's box. So you've got to get yourself across the line due diligence wise, work out that you're working with someone that you can do business with, and you just got to go with that decision.
Nice. Well, to jump straight into things, AB, let's talk about stages of life. And we'll use cars as a good little proxy and as an example. We'll have some fun with this one. So stages of life, let's say you are similar to me. So young in your 20s, you're just starting out. What are you looking at going and buying from the car yard?
Well, I think rather like investing, when you're getting ready to start, any car will do. You just want something that's going to get you from A to B. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it moves and it's got a loud stereo in it. Then that's,
what did you have? What was your first car?
My first car was called a Mini Metro. It was that small. I had to zip it around me when I got in. It was pretty small. What about yourself?
2002 Honda CR-V Sport. It had cruise control and heated seats, though.
Goodness me,
got some good use out of that.
I bet you did. And we'll no doubt heated seats in Queensland. That's
winter, up on the hill, look out with a nice date, heated seats did the trick.
We'll cover that off shortly, I'm sure. I'll have to think about that. So, as I say, when you're starting out, any car will do. And I think for somebody that's in the investing space, I want to get started in investing almost to the point where any investment will do. It could be crypto, Forex, could be futures, could be CFDs, could be shares. And there's no real, or a property for that matter. And it doesn't really matter what it is as long as you kind of get started. And then you're on that journey. Always easier to keep moving once you've started than be getting ready to start. And I think if we take the car example, you work out fairly quickly that any car won't do because reliability is probably something that's fairly important to you. And if you bought an old junker like I had, it's not that reliable, and all of a sudden it doesn't get you from A to B. And so you need to switch out into something that's a little bit more reliable. Now, chances are you've got a little bit more money because you're a little bit older. And so you might look to buy something that perhaps is a safer play, having wanted to discard the bad experience of the junker. And in just the same way with investing, if you've jumped in, boots and all, without really doing any kind of research and just knowing you need to start investing. And look, there's not a criticism. I'm always happy to see people start investing. Better to start than not. once you're in, it's time to modify that message, just like the car. So, you might get rid of some of the really speculative assets that you might have and settle things down into something that's a little bit more reliable. Crypto has been a really good example of that recently, where, it's been incredibly volatile, more to the downside. And it's seen, the millennials that have been looking at getting into it or being in it start to wash their hands and move into other things. Just had that conversation this morning with my barista, Mr. Crypto himself, who's starting now to move into NFTs. He said, do you know anything about NFTs? And I referred him back to the interview we did with Eric Purlier a few months ago, who's basically the creator of NFTs. So
crazy.
Yeah, that's in this podcast series for anyone that's interested. So, second step, not just any car, but something that's going to be a little bit more reliable. Same with investing, not just any investment, but maybe something that gives you a little bit more reliability.
We can talk about this in the property market as well. You're buying your first house, you're buying where you can afford. Now, that may or may not be in the safest suburb based on affordability, so you get some more money behind you, some more education.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's a price-driven decision. It's what you can afford. And it's a crucial decision. And again, this by no means is a beat up of anybody for being in the wrong asset. Any place is a great place to start because you have started, as opposed to somebody that's sitting on the couch waiting to start. So good place to go. Next thing, you go in, you got something reliable, and then I guess you get a little bit more money, and then you start to go, okay, this is a bit, I need to spread out into something that's a little bit more colorful than where I'm at, but not the crazy stuff I used to do. If we use that from a car terminology, I suppose, and I guess I've got to apologise to our female listeners. I can only look at this through male lenses, being a bloke.
This is going to be good.
I remember sort of some of my car decisions were more orientated about being a bachelor and having a support tool, for want of a better description.
What cars were they? Just out of interest for our viewers here.
Yeah, I've done a few in that space. Did the Aston Martin, Ferrari, been down that pathway a few different times. Always two-door. And in the large part, 2-seat as well, yeah. So very much a bachelor's car. Outcome driven. As I say, maybe my dating game was really, really lame, and I needed something to prop it up a little bit. Who knows? And in the same way, as an investor, you might have started, got a few shares, and then maybe something like Afterpay comes along, and you go, look, this has got a little bit more interest and spice to it, but it's it's an ASX listed stock. It's a top 50 company. Maybe have a bit of a bash at that, and that's that facet of life. And I think to understand that, there's an element of risk appetite still. You're still young enough where you like to have some level of risk and excitement in your life. You've not got to the stage where you've gone over the bridge. And this is something within the financial planning space. We're constantly with our clients in that sort of domain, doing fact finds and risk management surveys, because people's attitude to risk does change over time, and consequently the advice that you provide, if it's personal advice, needs to update and reflect that. So this notion that risks and things like that, you want a fast car, maybe red. If it's Ferrari, it's got to be red, I suppose. Red or blue, they're the only two acceptable colors. You do that and you accept the fact that the risk is it's pretty expensive, and you're probably going to lose your license at some point if you're a fool and you're showing off in it. And actually, just in case it's anyone else's aspiration to have one of those, neither of those brands, I hope I don't get sued for saying this, they're not renowned for their reliability. I'll just leave it there.
Well, that's kind of the next point I'd like to flesh out. It's outcome driven that you're making a decision on, right? And investing is the same. However, you have to be prepared to take the punches in the face, because yes, you can go out and spend $300,000-$400,000 on an Aston Martin, but you have to be prepared to outlay $5,000 or $6,000 every time it breaks down.
Yeah, 2 clutches I think I'll put through mine in about 10,000 kilometres, and that's not a reflection on my driving, I might add, but maybe it is. But,
and same as if you bought Afterpay, you know that there's maybe a good outcome down the line, but you have to be prepared to accept the volatility, right?
Absolutely. You don't get the rainbow without the storm. So yeah, that's the thing that goes alongside it. So you've got something that looks good, the reliability from a car perspective, and indeed the functionality. There's no place to put your luggage, but then you don't really need a lot of luggage. You're a bachelor, so you probably got a wet pack for your overnight prospect, and that's about the extent of it. So that's that chapter of life, and that's investing in that space. And I guess the move out of there is that, okay, let's go back to reliability again, and maybe you've got a little bit more asset behind you, or if you bought an exotic car, then you obviously have. And in the investing space, maybe the slower moving, more dependable stuff, or maybe the stuff that's had a little bit of spice to it, has performed for you, and it's time to branch out, and you get something that's maybe reliable, but still has that level of exotic about it and has a bit of common sense. And I know when I met my wife, if I was in one of my previous cars, she would not have had a bar of me, because she would have looked at me and probably had a fairly accurate diagnosis of who I was at that particular chapter. So I went down the same route. I went down German, reliable, 2-door, sporty. Happy
BMW,
days.
Mercedes?
Yeah, BMW in my case.
Nice.
And what are you rolling at the moment?
Two-door Mercedes for me, sports car. But I'm in sort of early chapters.
Yeah, any room for kid seats in the back?
No
yet?
kid seats, no luggage space, wet bag in the back, that's it. Toothpaste, toothbrush, and a pair of underpants, and I'm set.
So now what we're talking about is where you've got a portfolio that's if we take this back to an investment space, you've got something that's robust, that's reliable, it's got a track record of success in the case of Mercedes in your case, but still offers enough cachet and excitement for you. How come someone of your age that's young who's got a very nice car like that can't hurt your dating game? Sorry to be crude about it. Not that you need any help in that space.
Thanks.
Look at those finely chiseled features over
Thank
there.
you.
But at the same time, doesn't do any harm in that space. So it sort of ticks a lot of boxes. And I guess from an investing point of view, that's where you've started to push out. You've got your portfolio, your core holdings that are really reliable, really dependent. And because you've got a little bit more cash to work it, you've added around that. And it's the start of really an asset allocation decision, I suppose, where you've been able to add a little bit more flavor around it. Maybe that you've got a property portfolio and in the same vein, it's nice and solid, dependable, fully let, happy days. And now you're adding a few shares and in the stock market around that as well to give you some diversification. So that's kind of how that investment journey kind of can move forward for a lot of people and the sort of decision making behind it to that next point. Yeah.
I guess that's probably the pinnacle when we get to someone, say, of your stage, AB, where you've kind of done it all and now it's about functionality for your family. So tell us a little bit about the fleet of cars that you have.
We, I think at the moment we've got 8 vehicles in our house. I think we've got 8 vehicles.
8 vehicles for 7 people.
Well, yeah, my kids I've got 5 kids, they're 7 and under. So although my son, plus my son's motorbike as well, and I've got a dirt bike in there as well, so we can add those in. But yeah, he's riding around on his dirt bike. He's also driving a couple of my farm vehicles. I haven't let him loose on a car yet, but he's not far off that. So yeah, I mean, that becomes like a diversified portfolio, if you will, where you've started to buy a vehicle in this example, or if it's an investment decision, a portfolio of assets. Maybe you've got a property and you've parlayed that into a second, third, fourth property. You've got a stock market portfolio, which may be inside super, and then you might have another one outside of super. And the approach that you're taking with each of those portfolios is slightly different. Maybe the super one is about long-term growth and dependability, your German underlying asset, I suppose. And then around that, maybe outside of that, you've got something that's giving you a little bit more color and the ability to kind of supercharge that and have some fun. So, you might have some crypto, for example, or you might have some more speculative assets running around there. But the core of your holdings are in lower risk positions because you've simply got older. So, in our house, like I was 5 kids, so got the 9-seater van, the 18 van.
The Valente. Yeah, that's my favorite, I think.
It's pretty good. It's actually leather seats. It's not bad. Air conditioning, happy days. And a lot better than my first car, that's for sure.
Totally.
And that's practical. It's the 18 van. We can bundle them in, drop them at school. It just works. Put the dogs to the beach, all those sorts of things. So that's all cool. We've got what else? We've got a Land Rover, great for towing, great for on the farm. My wife loves that car too for some reason. That's her favorite, I think. And then what else? We've got a Range Rover. That's my wife's car. She wanted that. I think it matches a handbag or something like that. So
fair enough.
Yeah, you got towing car that's for the farm and does all that. Then she's got something from, I guess, a lifestyle perspective, good for the gram.
Good for the gram.
And then it goes beyond there. Yeah.
What are you driving?
Today I got my Bentley today.
The V12.
The V12. That's a lot of fun. And I guess that's a sort of a foot in 2 camps really these days, because to an extent it's an exotic in that it goes like the clappers, but it's also pretty practical. I actually got I was smart. The only way I could sell that one across the line at home was to say, look, I'm going to get a family car, and I came back with that, and it's a 7-seater. They realize you get a 4-wheel drive with the 7 seats, and fantastic. So there you've got a portfolio of assets or a portfolio of cars, and each one of them is designed to do different things depending on where you're at. Now, and you can have your Sunday drive in there, which might be a little bit more colourful in 2 seats. Eat coffees and do all that, which we do, and on it goes. But the crux of it is that the stage that you're out of life and your needs at this stage of life are radically different from, I just need any car. I couldn't, for example, put my kids in my first car. A, they wouldn't have fit, but B, we wouldn't have been able to get them to school. We'd have probably broken down on the way. So reliability and safety, and obviously capacity when you've got 5 kids is something that's quite important. And investing is just the same. And then when you see someone that perhaps is at a stage of life where they are a little bit older, and they're messing around in the soft top red two-seater and midlife crisis, whatever you want to call it.
My dad, you mean?
Yeah, and I've sort of been guilty of that to an extent. I don't know if it's midlife, maybe it is or not, I don't know. But you look at that and you go, okay, midlife crisis is the cliche that you can come out and suggest to that, which is possibly true. The reality is it's a car that doesn't seem suitable for that person. It seems more suited to someone at your stage for the reasons that we've discussed. And in just the same way, and this ties it back to the conversation with the lady yesterday, some of the assets that she was buying into a portfolio, because one of the TV sets she was listening to, part of the noise in the background was talking about this fairly speculative business. And so she's gone and added that into a portfolio. 62-year-old lady driving around in a bright red sports car, equivalent of a trade. It's the wrong trade for her and her risk appetite. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be enjoyable. It's not practical. It's not got the reliability that you probably want, and ultimately is going to end up with you, well, if it's an exotic car, you're going to be out of pocket to an extent, and that could certainly happen with shares as well. So, I know this is a sort of a strange sort of journey that we've been on through this particular conversation. There are similar signposts all the way through, and it's recognizing what your needs are, and it's that ability to be objective about what you buy to satiate those needs, whether it be in the car space or, as we're talking about investing, about what assets you put into your mix, because not all shares are the same, not all properties are the same, not all managed funds are the same, and it's a question of taking that time to select what really does suit your needs at a particular point in time, driven by utility, needing something for kids. If my wife and I didn't have any kids, we'd have a very different range of cars, I'm sure. So, that utility is a huge factor, but the reliability, the dependability, the safety features become increasingly important as you move along the line. Early days, any car will do, any share will do, any level of risk will do, just get me started. Unfortunately, not everyone grows through those safety catches or hatches, if you will, or doorways, and you can get trapped in a particular zone. I've got a buddy of mine who's trapped in one of those zones, not only vehicle-wise, but lifestyle-wise. He hasn't grown up and grown through that space yet, and that's his journey, not mine. I'm not going to judge him for that. He seems to be as happy as he wants to portray on social media.
What zone is he in? Let me get me stuck there.
He's in the playground still, which he probably should be out of the playground now and maybe moving through there perhaps, if that's what he wants for his life. And in the reality is, you see the same thing in the investing space where, I've always done this. I've always bought these kinds of shares. Now, remember also there's a legacy space as well. And you might have old faithful. So let's just say you've had a car and you've had it forever. And I've got a buddy of mine in his business. He never sells cars. He never, ever sells cars. He's got a fleet of them, doesn't sell them. He just keeps them for the kids, for his staff, pushes it down the line, whatever. And there are some things that perhaps you wouldn't get rid of. So remember, maybe you had an uncle that left you a 1974 Monaro. I don't even know if that exists. Not my cup of tea, that sort of car. But you've been left a 1974 Monaro, and that might be something that you carry right the way through your whole life. And then you're never going to sell it. There's a legacy. You love it. You've got an affinity to it. Been a pretty good investment too, I wouldn't wonder.
Sure.
And you can see the same thing in a share portfolio. So someone may have picked up some stock, Woolies or Commonwealth Bank for that matter, during their listing when they first hit the market, and they've kept them ever since. And there's a good reason for not selling them, because the capital gains tax would be massive. So it's just something that sits in your portfolio, because to sell it is prohibitive tax-wise. You'd argue and you'd hope that, hopefully you haven't got AMP in your portfolio for the same reasons. At least you've got a tax loss there to maybe offset, because that's been a shocker for anyone that's held that since it listed. So, sometimes you can have legacy items that come on that whole journey through with you, just like shares, just like vehicles perhaps, or just like some of the trinkets in life that we pick up. You think about, in your house, you've got I remember that trip when I was 15. It was the first time I'd gone overseas and I bought this, and look at it, but it's just something you can't let go of because you've got some endowment effect associated with it. It comes with you on the journey right through your life. And you could argue that too from a portfolio perspective. But I think as you move through those different stages of life, you do have to have a very, very close look at what you've got asset-wise and why you've got it. Is it for the utility, the dependability, the safety? Does it do what you actually want it to do, or does it do what you used to need? And if your needs have changed, it's time to move asset. Totally.
And the kicker with that is to understand how this game works. Now, we've spoken about this quite loosely and referred it to using cars, which makes it sound simple. It's not that easy to understand the nuances of when certain stages change. So to anyone out there who's maybe wondering, how do I understand what stage I'm in and what I need to do? What would you suggest?
Get educated in the first instance. And I think part and parcel of the learning process, if we take the car example, as you've owned a few cars, you start to know what you want and what you don't want, what's important to you and what's not. And you might sacrifice certain features and benefits to get what you need. Investing is just the same. So experience is a great teacher, but experience takes an awful long time to acquire. And you don't just acquire it over time, because you can keep making the same mistake over and over and over again. So that's not new experience. You're just caught in that sort of that vortex, that loop of not really growing, but just having the same thing over and over. So I think, experience is great, but it takes a long time to acquire. So, learning from experience is good, but learning from somebody else's is even better, because you can fast track it. And that's something that's crucial. I look at my journey. I just mapped this out for a chat I've got to have with a group next week. And, my first share purchase was 1987. And today is 2022. There's 35 years of learning through there. And you can get the same thing. You just got to take 35 years. Maybe I was a slow learner. But it's going to take you 35 years to know that. Or you can spend some time with someone that's already got that experience, and they say, look, don't buy that. It's an absolute lemon if you're talking about a car, or the same thing for a stock for that matter. You want to be in these kinds of stocks, and these are the reasons why. So getting educated, I think, is really important. Overarching all of this, I still believe, even if you make a mistake, getting started is better than not starting at all and waiting for perfection. I'm not going to buy a junker. I'm just going to buy a Lambo. That's my dream car. Great, but that probably won't happen. You've got to start the journey first and build through it and learn along the way. Just the same way with investing. I want to have 20 investment properties. Well, that starts with number one. So let's go and buy number one first of all. And then if you do that properly, number two will take care of itself. And the process, the vehicle is really in play to do it. So getting started, more than any single thing, get educated, talk to people you can trust. Just avoid having too many sources of input, because that leads to a state of confusion. And with the best will in the world, there's so many distractions in the world today, Mitch, that having the bandwidth to be able to absorb there's so much information in our game, just in the narrow field that we play in. For anybody that's new to this, it can be really overwhelming. So just find that reliable source, something that makes sense to you logically. Go, that kind of makes sense. Let's just do this. Let's get on with it, and follow that channel right the way through.
Nice one. Great way to finish, AB, and sage advice. So thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Anytime. There you have it, guys. Make sure you give us a review and a rating so we can spread the word further out there, and we'll look forward to hosting you next week.